Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Backlog Battle Podcast. This is Alex. Welcome to Season 8, Discover, Play Together. This week, we are joined by bunnytails. I've known Bunny since my Twitch days back in 2014, 2015. I don't remember anymore. And recently, she just joined YouTube, and I'm really happy for, just for her in general. So, welcome, Bunny.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Again, because I somehow, accidentally, not even accidentally, my hard drive died where 2 of the episodes of this new podcast kind of came on, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh crap, I gotta tell Bunny that we gotta re-record again. But thank you for, being here once again and doing this with me all over again.
Yeah, no problem.
Before we continue, buddy, I want to take the time to shout out Alice, and she's known as NerfAlice on Twitter, for providing us with the awesome Ghost of Tsushima artwork that you're seeing on the video version of this podcast. If you happen to be an artist and you want to showcase your gaming-themed artwork in a future episode, please reach out to me on Twitter at MyBacklogBattle. And if you're listening to the show, you can watch this on video and join in the comments at youtube.com/backlogbattle. That way, we can all talk about the latest episode and enjoy this wonderful artwork created by Alice. So, it's 2021. All the bad shit from 2020 is gone, hopefully. We're starting over anew, right? How was your 2020 in gaming, and just in general?
2020 was really crazy.
Yeah.
It's like, where to begin?
Mm-hmm.
But as far as gaming goes, I mean, it was really good because I ended up having, for at least part of the year, due to lockdowns, I had a lot of extra time for a time because at my work things kind of did slow down, which didn't, unfortunately didn't last forever, but I was able to get a lot of gaming done, and starting the YouTube as well. That was the reason that I started the YouTube as well. Something that I've been wanting to do, for a long time. But I was like, I don't have the time. And then I was like, oh, well, I have the time now.
Yeah.
So let's do it.
That's really cool. And what's actually really fascinating is, because you started YouTube, you had to learn it really fast, right? Did you actually do a lot of research before you started YouTube? Or you just literally are like, well, I know what to do. I'm just going to freaking start posting videos.
I did do a lot of research.
Oh.
I did a lot of research, actually. You sound a little surprised.
Well, no, it's not that I'm surprised. It's more like, it's, you just mentioned you didn't have enough time to do YouTube. So it kind of made me wonder how much, how much research you actually did before kind of deciding okay, let's do YouTube this year because now I have more time. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah. So my YouTube was open and I kind of had videos of highlights from my Twitch stream on there for a long time, many years. But I never really made content or edited content specifically for YouTube until, earlier on in this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, but actually, there is a person that was really a big part of that, Squints a lot. Squints.
Yeah,
we know her from back in our Twitch days as well. So Squints, she was pushing me to do more with the YouTube and kind of get into it and edit videos. And I'm like, well, I don't know the first thing about it. So that's one of the things that kind of held me back because I didn't know anything about video editing. I didn't know what programs to use. And she's like, well, here, go ahead and use this program. It's free. That's what I use. Give it a try. And so just that kind of nudge just kind of opened up all the doors for me because I was like, okay, I can do this very simple, editing here and there and cutting out parts of the video of my playthroughs that I don't really think is necessary for the YouTube. And it kind of just took off from there.
It's funny you mentioned all this stuff, and watching your content on YouTube, you could have fooled me. I would have been like, you've known this whole time. And I actually didn't know that Squints helped you out a lot with this because funny enough, I was actually trying to push Squints to do the YouTube stuff. And so it's funny that by pushing her, she pushed you to do the YouTube stuff. And I'm like, okay, so it's this weird telephone thing happening here where,
that is really cool.
Yeah. And to your, and to what you said too, it's literally like at that point, I think you mentioned last time it was like around May-ish when you started dabbling in this stuff. And that was literally around the time when I was pushing Squints to be like, hey, let's, you should post more YouTube stuff. But, I'm not going to like try to list like every single thing we talked about, but let's just say that I tried to really hard to, to push her towards that direction because as you already know, like you get a different audience on YouTube that you wouldn't otherwise just streaming, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's the main reason that I wanted to do it. Because I kept hearing advice from just people, everywhere. People who give advice on like growing an audience on Twitch and whatnot. And all of them say one of the same things, which is get on YouTube for discoverability. And Twitter and Instagram, but mainly YouTube. Yeah. Twitch is just, you can't get discovered there. Like it's very hard.
It really is. Like, and I think, that was actually one of the main reasons why I left Bunny, to be quite honest, because, if I was going to devote a good amount of my time doing this stuff, like I need the tools that the platform provides to be just as good, if not better than YouTube. And that's why, like, when I found out that I just kind of been watching like Twitch on the side, being a YouTuber, and it's so crazy to me that we're like 5 years since I left, and the discoverability still isn't that good compared to YouTube,
Yeah, and that's why I'm kicking myself in the butt constantly, like just beating myself up over why didn't I start this sooner? Because I've been doing this Twitch thing for 6-7 years.
Yeah, 6-7
Imagine
years.
where I could be now if I started, putting the effort into YouTube and discoverability in general.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Bunny, you're already way ahead of the curve because you're actually doing it and everybody else is hemming and hawing, thinking like, oh, I should probably do my YouTube. But you're already in it. You're in the thick of it,
Yeah,
like,
they're me 1 year ago.
or 2 years ago, depending on like how far along like people listen to this. I will say though, like I don't know if you do this on your videos and stuff, but one thing that a friend of mine actually found out, and this is something that kind of goes against the grain of everything that I know about TV and movies and video in general, is to say like, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, like that sort of thing. And it's like, and to me, like, I was like, that sounds really corny to try to do that every single time. And my friend is like, well, I got to 20,000 subscribers because I did in 1 year because of that. I'm like, and I was like, I was so confused. And they were like, well, no, the reason why you're saying that isn't because like, like to be annoying and stuff, but people genuinely, like, after listening or even watching a video for a long time, they forget. They genuinely forget to like, comment, and subscribe and stuff. And so you have to remind them, even if it's at the beginning and of course at the end. And I was like, it never occurred to me that it's more of a reminder as it is like a command. And so I'm going to try it this year. That's literally what I'm going to try. Like, but I'm not just going to like shoehorn it, like randomly, like just be like, share, and subscribe like all the time. But like, because that's kind of like my thing is like, I don't want to just say it because, but you should try it too, I guess is what I'm saying. Cause I think it'll be really cool, make it both try it.
Yeah. It does feel weird. It does feel very unnatural to me. And I like in my brain, I know, like, I know the reasoning for it, and I know that it's a good thing. It probably might be off-putting to some people, but probably not for the majority of people out there watching. So you're right.
That's all you'll say. And that's fine. I pushed back against doing that whole thing for 3 years. You can push back a little bit longer. That's okay.
I'm very stubborn. I didn't have a donate or a tip button on my stream for the longest time because I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I don't want,
Yeah.
And now it's like, everybody does it and it's fine and it never hurt anybody. So
Yeah. Look, like my whole thing is this, right? Like, when people like one of the things that keeps happening to me lately, especially since I'm reviewing a lot of games pre-release, a lot of people are like, how the hell did you get that? Is it because you're a YouTuber? And this story actually that I shared on general chat for, the Discord, which is bit.ly/bb Discord community, in case people were wondering. There's this story about like Picasso, like it's like a legend of Picasso and stuff. But basically Picasso's like, a great artist. The story goes, one day he was like sitting at a cafe and stuff like that, and an admirer of his actually approached him and asked him to draw something. And of course Picasso drew something and stuff. It's actually a famous picture of a dove on a napkin. And then so the admirer asks like, so how much is this going to be? And then Picasso said like some ridiculously huge amount of money. And then, admirer kind of got pissed off, and he was like, why is it you're charging me this much? It only took you like 2 minutes to like freaking finish this drawing and stuff. And of course, Picasso was like, excuse me, this took me like 40 years of my life to do this, and of course, like, and of course the whole idea is that, a lot of people think, as you and I as creators and stuff, we're always reluctant in asking people for help or even money and stuff like that for what we do. But there is a reality to that story that, we're so passionate about what we do that why not get a few bucks here and there for all the hard work that we're getting, like, because, at some point, the hobby turns into something else, and at some point we have to recognize that. And I think you getting to that point where like you're just like, you know what, I'm just gonna turn on tips and PayPal and all that stuff on Patreon maybe later, and ads and stuff, like, why not? Like it's more money to buy games, like that's what I think about it. And the kind of games you've been playing over the past year are not cheap to get unless you already had them, like Drakengard and Nier and stuff. You played them all last year, right?
In the last couple of years, yeah.
Yeah. And were they like cheap at all or expensive or?
I mean, when I picked up Nier Gestalt from Best Buy used, it was like $30 something.
My God. You know at GameStop, I think I saw that for like even cheaper, like $10 or something like that.
But when?
About last year. Like towards the beginning of last year.
A couple years ago was still pretty recently that Automata had come out. So
yeah,
the person at GameStop told me that the price had gone up recently because of that. Yeah.
Okay, that's weird. Maybe it was a bit longer. Like because Automata is like what, like 3 years now, 4 years. Uh-huh. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, either way, you were able to play the games, and I'm really happy for that. So one of the things that I really liked about like our collaboration last year too was like, you were obviously a huge part of the award show. Like a lot of people have told me through comments and private messages that when they got to the part, your part of the award show where you were talking about Final Fantasy VII Remake, and then, the part of the video showed up where it was pulling out from Midgar, and you were like, you were really like moved by, what was happening and stuff. Like a lot of people said that they were actually really moved by, by your feelings and stuff, like just expressing yourself. Like, I guess my whole thing, what I want to ask you then is, how was that experience when you were streaming it? Like, how were people reacting to you and stuff? Like, I'm kind of curious how that turned out.
Well, geez, I was so enwrapped in the game that I probably missed a lot of what was going on actually in the chat in those very intense moments. But a lot of people really enjoyed it because there were a lot of people watching and coming back, and a lot of people saying that oh, this part got me too, or I cried here as well, and they just wanted to see the next part. How's she gonna react? That's kind of like what my focus was, I guess. When I started the YouTube, I was like, I'm actually, the kind of content that I can put out is kind of like reaction content, because I play games for the first time and I'm very passionate about them. So I do have a lot of feelings and emotions about the games I play, and particularly Final Fantasy VII. But so yeah, that's what I like to watch as well. You know, people playing, you know, something that I just maybe finished playing, and
yeah,
I thought it was, you know, a great experience. And then how did they react? What did they think about this? Did they cry too? Don't tell me I'm not the only person who cried on this part, okay?
Yeah. Yeah. I will be honest, Final Fantasy VII Remake is in my backlog. Don't hate me. It's yeah, so over the break I was playing it on and off, but my wife doesn't like the game. Like, just because not because like she, you know, she doesn't like Final Fantasy VII, but just like she's against what they were trying to do with the remake, and I definitely respect and understand that. So a lot of the time that I've been playing Final Fantasy VII is actually through remote play on my Vita. So like she'd play something else on the TV, and then, you know, I have like remote play and stuff playing the PS4, and I think I'm not even that far. Like, I literally got to the slums, you know, and I want to say the part of the story is I just did a mission with Jesse, like, because, you know, basically I got kicked out of Avalanche and stuff, and that was a huge surprise. I mean, that's a very minor spoiler, but I was like, wait, what? Like, that didn't happen in the original. We were on to like do the next like freaking, you know, like sector generator and stuff, like the sector reactor. What's this BS? You know, like, and so I think what is getting me to like really like the game right now is like, you know, the little additions that they've done for, you know, for like the progression system. Because let's face it, the materia system is awesome, right? Like, you know, that whole progression system is amazing. And now they added on top of that, you know, like this, I forget his name, but that one guy who basically gives you like new materia by doing certain things, you know, during battles. And also like being able to upgrade your weapons. I thought that was like, that is literally just like 1 degree above like what you were already doing in the original 7, that I was like, well, yes, like this is, you know, if they were literally going to remake Final Fantasy VII, which they did, obviously, that would make the most sense to put where the new additions are. And, you know, and one thing recently that happened to me was I finally got like a summon materia. And you know, unlike the original, they have like a dedicated spot for summon materia. And I'm just like, oh, thank goodness. Like, you don't have to do that. Like, what did you think of those kinds of changes, both the story and the mechanics in Final Fantasy VII Remake, out of curiosity?
I'm all for it, and I'm just, you know, kind of along for the ride, because I feel like if they tried to recreate the original Final Fantasy VII just as, you know, play by play as it is, 1-to-1, I don't think that it would have been, I don't think it would have worked, because you can't really recreate that game, like, in that feeling that people had when they played it, you know, back in the day. And so I do think that the new like changes and things that they're making to the story are, you know, it's kind of like it's a new thing, because you can never replace the original. And I think it's a good thing that they didn't try to replace it, you know?
Yeah. And
that's my thoughts anyways.
I agree with you there, because like, you know, for one thing, I remember when Yoshinori Kitase, who's the producer of the game and a former director of 7, by the way, when 7 Remake was, you know, kind of like maybe in the planning stages, I think he kind of posited this weird question and said, well, do you guys really want a Final Fantasy VII Remake? Because what's going to happen is, if we do that, we have to devote our entire business unit to making that game. In other words, we're not going to make Final Fantasy 16. And of course, years later, you know, or rather the same year 7 Remake comes out, it was revealed that, yeah, you're right, they're not making 16. You know, another part of the company is. And you know, and within that question, you know, I think what's actually really fascinating about that is that, you know, I felt that because they can't make the next Final Fantasy, they tried to find a way that not only can they have to, not only will they honor the old part of Final Fantasy VII, but to also bring in new stories in such a way that both newcomers and veterans can enjoy it equally. You know what I mean? It's like it's the same but not, and it's because of that all of us can come together and enjoy the same thing. Would you agree with that?
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, exactly. That's exactly what I wanted to say.
Yeah. I mean, we're both saying the same thing, but it's we like the game a lot. Like I can't say that I love it yet. I mean, I don't get me wrong. Like the whole part in a like there are a couple of parts that it's not really a spoiler, but like I hope not. But like the first time you get on a motorcycle and doing that boss battle on it, I was like, "What? This is nuts, man!" Like, and they even made an original character for that, if I remember correctly. And I was like, "This is insane!" Like, and I think it's really cool so far in the story. And I know like a lot of people say like, "Oh, it slows down later," but I'm like right now, I'm really literally and figuratively enjoying the ride. Like it is. Like it is a higher resolution version of a game that I loved back in the 90s, and I can't really fault them for trying something new, like taking a risk for even altering the story, like even slightly, because it feels more whole. It feels more whole. But anyways, so kind of leaving that topic, I have seen that you've been dabbling in the Yakuza series over the past few years. You want to talk a little bit about that and how you wound up just trying them out?
So the first time I was ever exposed to that series is I was watching a streamer friend of mine play through the original one. This was before Kiwami and Zero and Kiwami 2 came out. So he was playing the first Yakuza, and honestly, like what I saw did not look impressive at all. It didn't look interesting to me. Like I saw like there was a bunch of guys talking, the setting, and like it's just the kind of like Japanese mafia thing. I was like, I don't think that's for me.
Yeah, like it felt too macho, right?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not really opposed to macho things, but
okay.
I mean, maybe, I don't know. But then just like the combat, just like beating, I mean, I guess it is pretty macho, right? But
yeah.
Yeah, so anyways, one of my viewers, like later on down the line, he gifted me on Steam Yakuza 0. Ooh. And I believe possibly Kiwami, but he definitely got me 0. And for some reason or another, I decided that I was going to play it, because just because he gifted it to me doesn't exactly necessarily mean that I would play it right away. Because I have so many games in my backlog.
Yeah.
And a lot of them are gifts. And it's like I have games from 6-7 years ago, like from the very beginning, that people have gifted me that I still have not gotten around to.
I believe it.
So I don't remember exactly what spurred me to actually give it a try, but I did, and I was completely blown away by Yakuza 0.
Wow. How long ago was this when you started playing Yakuza 0? Was it like a year or 2 ago?
2019. Okay. 2019. And I had to think like, okay, we're in 2021 now.
Yes.
So I can't say last year anymore.
Yeah. Okay. And have you just been like kind of chipping away at like the other Yakuza games, like, like over the past few years and stuff?
Yeah. So beginning of this year, we played Kiwami, and kind of towards the end, beginning of last year.
Yes. It's 2021.
We're all in 2021, but for some reason we can't get away from 2020, can we?
Yeah, no, it happens to me too. Don't worry. I almost said like in a script I'm recording, like, oh yeah, it's like my favorite game last year. I'm like, no, because last year's 2020. It's 2021 right now, dude.
Yeah. So last year, I played through Kiwami and Kiwami 2. I just finished a couple months ago.
Okay. How was that?
Really, oh, Kiwami 2 was crazy.
Yeah.
The ending was nuts. I didn't know what was going on. Kiwami is my least favorite of the 3 so far.
Understandable. Yeah.
But they're all, even then it's an amazing game and worth playing 100%.
It's kind of interesting too that you're playing the game sequentially, because I'm not sure if you're aware, but the writer for the first and the second Yakuza games are actually the same, and then the rest of the series has different writers. Like Kiwami 2, like Yakuza Kiwami 2, like that was it. Like it was that guy's last project, and then he left. And what's really funny too, and you can only catch this if you actually have played the later games in the series. They actually inserted references to later Yakuza games in one of the side quests in Kiwami 2. Like it literally, like I think it was like some sort of proficiency test or some such, like that was asking you what you wanted to be in the future. And I think some of the answers were literally like paralleling like what's going to happen later in the series. Like, oh yeah, like I run an orphanage or a taxi driver or really weird stuff like that. It's like, and it's only like, and when I encountered that in Kiwami 2, I was just like, these guys know what the hell they're doing, because they know that, they know that people are going to replay these games, and some of them are going to be like, oh, these are throwaway answers, whatever. But the people who've been around since like the beginning, they're like, yeah, you're hinting at like what's going to happen later, and that's very cheeky of you. So
yeah, I didn't know that it was a different writer. So.
Yeah, but
I'm really excited to play Yakuza 3.
Ooh, and Yakuza 3 is considered by some, and I'll say some, that as like the weakest entry, and it's tied with that and 5. That being said, and I don't know if you know this, 3 was actually my first Yakuza game. Like that was the game that I actually started playing the series with, and I actually absolutely loved it. I knew what happened in 1 and 2. Like, I had the PS2 versions. Imagine that. And when 3 came out, I literally actually imported 3 before it even came out here. Played it a little bit, didn't understand a thing. And then when 3 came out here, I played it again. Now I understood it and loved it even more, And I think you'll have a really good experience because I think Yakuza 3, without going into spoilers, like really kind of shows the humanistic side of Kiryu, because the first 2 games, and actually, Zero aside, because that really came out later, like way later, like in the first 2 Yakuza games, Kiryu's very stoic, he's the kind of guy who just would rather argue with his fists if you can't reason with people, that sort of shtick. And then when 3 came out, it was like, it's this kind of laid back, peaceful Kiryu that you don't get to see, for quite a bit. And it's actually kind of refreshing to see him in like almost outside of his element, and I actually can't wait until you start playing it. And of course, naturally, like I can't wait till you play the later ones, including Like a Dragon, because
oh my gosh, yes,
Bunny, Like a Dragon is phenomenal. Like it is, my God. Like I have a friend who literally finished Like a Dragon 2 weeks ago, and he just finished playing like Yakuza 5. And he still keeps thinking about Like a Dragon. Like, that's how powerful that game is.
I can only imagine, and that's why, like, this year, I'm really just going to hammer out the Yakuza games, like, as quickly as I can. Like, I'm going to spread them out. But my goal is to get to Like a Dragon, or as close as I can before the year ends. Like, we're just going for it, because I'm really excited about the change of the combat style as well to the what
turn-based. Yeah, like it's it's from action to turn-based. Yeah.
Yes.
Do you want to ask me anything? I mean, I'm not going to tell you the story, obviously, but like, like we're friends, you can ask me about things about the game and stuff, and I will take care of you and not spoil anything.
Well, I know you would probably love to answer some questions, but I I like to go into games like as blind as possible.
I knew you were gonna say that.
Yes. I'm very strict about it too. Like, I usually won't watch trailers unless like it's like E3, because like, you know, but even like the last trailer that they had for E3 for Final Fantasy VII Remake, I was streaming the program, and I was like, I took my headset off and I closed my eyes and I'm like, guys, I'm not gonna watch this. Once I decide that I'm gonna play a game, then I stop watching trailers. I don't look at gameplay, you know. I just try to keep it as blind as possible. So I'm sorry, but I'm sure we can talk about it after I play it.
It's okay. It's okay. At least we can talk about, like, you know, Yakuza 0 to Kiwami 2, which, by the way, what I really, you know, of the 3 games, what I really want to talk to you about, because it's my absolute favorite, like, mini game, like, in the entire series history, is the Cabaret Club. Did you finish that entire storyline in both Yakuza 0 and Kiwami 2?
I did. Oh. Of course I did. How could I not?
What do you mean, of course you did? It's not a foregone conclusion. Some people do skip the side quest. Not to say that you are going to skip it, but what did you think of that? Because it's so interesting, like, you know, because Zero was obviously made with some of the future of the series in mind, right? Being that it's a prequel, and it is still one of the most beloved games of the entire main series. So I'm kind of curious, like, how do you feel about that whole storyline from, like, Zero and Kiwami 2, and whether or not, like, you know, there were things that you felt like could be improved or anything? Like, give me your thoughts.
It's kind of a tough question. I mean,
okay, so let me simplify it. Who are your best girls in that Cabaret Club? Do you still remember? Oh
gosh, I'm horrible with names.
You don't have to, just describe them.
Well, I know Yuki, of course.
Of course.
She's number 1.
Nice.
Of all.
Yeah, she has the best stats.
Well, that doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right.
I'm not talking about stats.
All right.
I'm talking about she's just the sweetest, cutest little button ever.
Yeah.
And the girl that I liked in Kiwami 2, and again, like, names are difficult for me.
Sure.
But she was like this, I want to say, the second to last girl that you kind of acquire. She is the manga artist. I don't remember her name, but if you played it, you'd know. She wears a green dress and she has long hair.
No, I know what you're talking about. I know exactly who you're talking about. Yeah, there's a lot of really sweet characters, like, in the Cabaret Club minigame, and it's kind of crazy if you think about it, right? Because you know what they're doing. You know, they're there to please men and stuff like that, get paid a lot, and make sure that they spend a lot of money. You know, but it's kind of presented in this kind of interesting way where they're not really downplaying what's going on, but instead it's kind of humanizing, you know, those girls and stuff who are joining you know, your club. And I thought, and of course Yuki, as you mentioned, is so endearing because she just wants, you know, like, to succeed for everybody and stuff, and for the club to still exist and not get pushed out. And so it's interesting then many years later when Kiryu encounters her, you know, obviously she doesn't know that Kiryu and Majima have a history, and that's a funny thing in and of itself.
I loved that part.
Yeah. And then so it's like it's just kind of like this great way to cap that storyline, you know, like with Kiryu actually running the Cabaret Club, and then Majima kind of realizing, like, oh, what the hell are you doing here, you know, that sort of thing. And it to me, like, personally, to answer my question, my 2 favorites that I'll never forget is the old lady, because she has, like, the best kindness stat, because of course she's an old lady, she's not gonna get by with looks, she has the best kindness. And to me, like, think about that, right? Like, think about, you know, somebody who is going to a cabaret club asking for Obachan, like for the old woman to be like, I just want to be cared for, be kind. And then, having Obachan like kind of gesture and be like, yeah, I need more drinks, more food, that sort of thing. Like it paints a really funny picture in your head of what's actually going on. And it's kind of endearing, because especially the story of that old woman in both games, it's
definitely.
It's really funny. And I do like the fact that the side quests are also tied to getting the women, right? Like to getting the people there. And so they have through the side stories, they have their backstory. The other character that I will tell you that I remember, just because her name is so freaking weird, is called Unknown. You remember that one?
Unknown?
Yeah, that is literally her name. She doesn't have any other name except Unknown, which is the weirdest name. That's why I can't forget her, because her name is Unknown.
I'm not sure if I came across her.
Oh, you should try to figure out like how you can get Unknown. You haven't recruited everybody. Yeah, because literally, like I don't
think I recruited everybody. Maybe in Zero. Is she from there?
I don't recall. She might have. I'll have to check, but she is in one of those two games. I mean, we only have two games where the Cabaret Club is. But yeah, her name is literally Unknown. In fact, I actually tried to Google it just now, and nobody has her on on their wikis. And I'm like, this can't be like a figment of my imagination. I literally took a screenshot of that years ago and then tweeted it. So, but yeah.
But now I'm very intrigued.
Yeah, you should check it out. Because she might be. I don't know if she's OP. I know that she's really strange. Like she's almost inhuman, but she's still presenting female. So I don't know. You'll see. But
okay.
but I'm so happy though that you're enjoying the Yakuza series, because one thing I noticed too lately is that a lot of people are starting to talk about this series for some reason. Like I've been a fan for a very long time, and so I'm in this kind of position where, like, not that I'm trying to gatekeep or anything, but it's it makes me so happy for like so many other people, not just, not just you or me and stuff, or, but a lot more people kind of discovering the game. Like I remember when Carnage on Twitch started playing the series, I was like elated, because I'm like, this dude mostly plays Western games, mostly. And then to see him like play Yakuza and really fall in love with Kiryu and all those characters, like made my heart really like, melt and stuff. Because I'm like, oh, that's really cool, Have you ever like had that experience of, and this might be a tough question, but like, have you ever had that experience like seeing like one of your favorite series, like, and then coming into somebody's stream or somebody's channel and stuff and finding like them playing it for the first time, and then like, like really, being moved by their reactions?
That is a tough question.
Damn it. I every time like I get you on the show, whether it's the one right now or like the one that got lost last month, I seem to keep asking you the tough questions. I don't know why, and I do apologize for that. This should just be like casual gaming questions, like what is your favorite RPG of the year, that sort of thing. Speaking of which, like, before the show started, you talked about like your award show and stuff. Like, I saw it was like an hour and a half? That's pretty dang long.
Well, the whole show was pretty much my full like 4-hour stream.
Oh, okay. So the one on YouTube is condensed?
It is condensed, yeah.
Woo! Wow.
And I would have loved to kind of record like its own thing. But just with time, I just kind of did what I just know how to do with my other videos. Just kind of chop it up a little bit and just put forward the most important parts. So I cut it down to, it's like an hour and a half or so, yeah.
That's really cool. I mean, as you know, like I made my own award show last year, and that was quite the undertaking. Like I can't even imagine how long it took you to get ready for that stream, because I think when I started talking to you right around November about doing the award show, and did you already have an idea that you wanted to do something like that, like that early on? Or
I've done this for the past like I want to say 4 or 5 years. We've always had like an end of the year kind of top 10 games countdown, but this year was the most involved. Like, I added so many things that I didn't ever have before.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a lot of work, a lot of preparation, like days and days of just brainstorming and making videos and editing and getting everything all together.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, like, you have categories now. Like, it's not just like a top 10 list. Like, you were like, I think we were talking about like best boss fight and stuff, best soundtrack. Like, that is way more involved than a simple end of the year list, I guess my question then is, like, how did you wind up picking the categories? Because obviously it's your award show. You control whatever you want. Like, being the silly person that I am, I had to include a category called Best Yakuza Like a Dragon Karaoke Song because that's ridiculous. So, like, how about you? Like, do you have like anything like that, or what were the ones that you really wanted to share to people the most?
Best boy and best girl.
Okay, so best girl is probably Aerith Gainsborough, right? I mean,
it was, yeah, but it was a really tough decision. But I was at the very end. I was like, I have to make a decision.
So, but you still went with Aerith, right? Or was it like who else was vying for the award?
Well, I did play my first Persona 5 experience last year as well, which was Royal. I didn't play the original one, so. Mm-hmm. My best girl in that game was Kasumi.
Wow, Kasumi. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. So you're not like, all these other people who are like, who'd either pick like An or Makoto then. You were just like, no, I'm going to go for the new girl, Kasumi, because it's Kasumi.
Well, yeah, she wasn't new to me because every girl was new to me. But when I first saw her, I just kind of, I don't know. It was like love at first sight. She was just so sweet, and her little ribbon and her little ponytail, and I'm like, she's adorable and I love her. And I'm like, but I hadn't met everybody yet. So I was like, well, we'll see, who else we meet. And I just kind of stuck with her the whole way.
Playing Persona 5 Royal was very interesting for me because, like, I think at the time, if I remember correctly, it was around March, obviously. Like, the game came out like at the end of March. I was actually talking to a bunch of people who basically told me that they didn't just get Persona 5 Royal, like the keys for Persona 5 Royal for pre-release review, but they were also they also got early keys for Final Fantasy VII Remake at the same time, like literally a month and a half before the game came out. And I was like,
and those aren't short games.
No. Well, between the two, like 7 Remake is shorter, but like, like what was your final time count in Royal? Do you remember?
Yes. And don't be alarmed. There's like some reasons for it, but it was do you want to guess? Actually? Now I get to put you on the spot.
Okay. 200.
Close, very close. 218 was my final time logged.
Okay. The only reason why I say that too is because that was actually literally almost the time that I had in that game, like, at the end, and also replaying through it and getting some of the other trophies and stuff. So
yeah, but I found a lot of people had a lot shorter playtime than me.
Yeah, but consider this, right? It is a game that is a re-release. Like, how many of those people actually like just mashed through the the dialogue that they already knew from like 2 years ago? Like some people do that. Like they're literally like, oh well, I know this is gonna happen, I'm just gonna mash through it. But what's interesting about Royal though is like because there's more Persona fans now than there were years ago. This is the first time they've ever experienced Atlus releasing the game again, but with new content. You know what I mean? And so, since you didn't have a problem with it because this is your first, Persona experience, but like, I had a very different opinion of Royal many months later after beating it than I did with something like Persona 4 Golden, which was, which again was a re-release with new features of Persona 4 and also Persona 3 FES. I don't know if you felt this way as well, but like the whole like first quarter of the new year when they added content, it kind of felt a bit slower for me compared to the rest of the year. Would you agree?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Because like, you know, and the reason why I kind of bring it up is because like I felt like the Persona, the original Persona 5, the original, like had like that perfect cadence, right? Like it's like, okay, well, this is happening. Let's go fast forward, and then let's see if you got the true ending or not, or the bad ending, or what have you. And then like this whole new semester, because you had like a new dungeon and a new mementos, it was like, you know, and that being stretched across like 3 months, like, and plus that whole story bit, like it felt slower than usual. Not to say that it's bad. It's just it felt like the pacing like got kind of bogged down. And I think, you know, to me, I like 5 slightly better than Royal because of that. But then again, the stuff that they changed in Royal, like, I don't know if you know this, Bunny, but like, did you know that in Persona 5, the original, your ammo is finite? Meaning there's no such thing as replenishing ammo at the end of battle. You literally have whatever ammo you had, and then that's the entire dungeon for you for that gun. You know that?
Yeah, actually, I've heard of a lot of the things that they added.
Imagine like having to go back to Persona 5 and having to deal with that. Like, and that's kind of the thing that I was kind of bringing up, because like people say like, oh, well, you know, they could have released this as like DLC or whatever, but they actually added a significant amount in Persona 5 Royal. And
I will say that I've never played both versions of any of the games to see like the changes firsthand.
Right. And that was my mistake, because I do remember you playing through Golden.
No. I didn't
What?
actually. Okay, so I played, the first one I played was Persona 3 FES.
Okay.
And then I played the original Persona 4
Okay.
on my PlayStation 3.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I have not played Golden yet, but I can now because of the Steam version.
Ah, that's right. I'm sorry. Like I remember you playing some
How
form
dare you
of
not
Persona
know
4.
every game that I've played?
Well, Bunny, you have to understand, like, I pride myself in remembering trivial details about the people that I meet, okay? Like, I know, like, you can name somebody from my Discord, and I know, like, some weird trivial fact about them. So me, you know, like, remembering something about my favorite Persona game of all time that you played and misremembering that is a blow to my ego. So,
Don't feel too bad about it. Nobody here hates you.
Thank you. But I am looking forward to you playing through Golden. Do you think you're going to do that this year? That reaction.
I really want to. I find it difficult to go back and replay games or versions of games that I've already played, especially something of that length, because you got to understand. Okay, I got to play through the Yakuza series. I got to play through just, you know, the God of War series. I gotta play through this, that, and the other, and I have like this huge list, and it's like, do I want to, you know, go back and spend another 100+ hours playing? You know, I mean, I'm sure that that Golden is, you know, worth it, but.
And I totally get that. You know, like it's the same thing with me when people ask me to play an old game for a review or something like that. Like, you know, just recently, my wife and I started playing Fire Emblem Three Houses. Have you played that game?
I gotta play Fire Emblems. I gotta play East. I gotta play Tales of. There's people that are really getting on me about playing the Trails of.
Yeah, the Trails of series, not the
Legends
Tales of.
The Legends of Heroes. That's what I'm trying to say. Legends of Heroes, which is another long one.
Mm-hmm. That is 9 games total right now.
And they're not, like, how long are those about?
So I spoke to somebody who I consider an expert on this. He claims it's 400 hours, but I think it's more than that. I actually think it's more than that. It's probably closer to about 500 or 600 hours and stuff.
For all the games, right?
For all 9 games, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, you want to talk about like overwhelming. The Trails series is probably the most overwhelming, and which is why, like, you know, like, I don't want to kind of rehash this conversation because I've had it with many people before, but like that's why I tell people to start with Cold Steel. because you will miss some of the context in the previous games. But the key here is for you to start with a game in a series to see if you enjoy it, right? Because what if you played Sky and you realize like you didn't like the battle system, but when like let's say you take a stab at like Cold Steel and realize you like that better, like even though they're similar gameplay styles, doesn't mean that like they both play exactly the same, because they're not, and that's kind of like why I tell people, like, try any of the Trails games that you want, see, and if you're interested enough in the characters, you're going to want to play the old ones, most likely. But let's not cross that fjord if you don't have to. Let's not talk about that unless unless it's time. That is a huge undertaking, though, and especially since there's actually 2 more games coming up from that series, by the way, in case you're wondering. That we don't have yet.
2 more?
There is a new one coming out in Japan this year, which will bring the total up to 11 games.
Some of these developers in Japan that make these JRPGs, like, they can get these games out quick.
Yeah.
I feel like, we wait like 8 years for the sequel to Red Dead Redemption or something like that. When 2 came out, they're crazy. How do they work so fast? To
be fair, Persona 5 took a while to come out because, like they were working on it shortly after, 4. And then the Tohoku earthquake happened in 2011, and then they changed gears completely. And then it took them about like an additional 6 or 7 years to get it out, maybe even 8. But that's definitely an exception to the rule. I did hear that the former Persona team's leadership, Katsura Hashino, the guy who has directed a lot of the Persona games since 3, their medieval fantasy game, which is Project Refantasy, he said that he's ready to show more of that game this year. Have you heard of that project?
This is my first time hearing about it.
So the project is called Project Refantasy, and the idea is that it's a counterculture RPG to what is currently popular. And the way that he described it is that if you look at the landscape of JRPGs today, there's a lot of modern style or even like futuristic style RPGs that are out there compared to the Super Nintendo era. Because in the Super Nintendo era, we had a lot more medieval fantasy with dragons and some sort of Western fantasy involved. And so Project Refantasy is a reaction to that by saying, let's return to that magical 16-bit era of games, but modernize it with modern systems, modern 3D engines, and all that stuff, and create like a JRPG fantasy game worthy of this generation. So think like the same grandeur as like a Final Fantasy or like a Persona, probably more so Persona, but like set in a different universe, like a fantasy world. And
that sounds really cool.
Yeah, and there's no details of it whatsoever ever since it got announced. And so
when did they announce this?
Oh gosh. If I search for it, I'm pretty sure it'll pop up. Project Refantasy. It was announced in December 2016.
Wow. So
in addition to, of course, the director, Katsura Hashino, who directed Persona 3, 4, 5, and Catherine, Shigenori Sojima, who is the character designer for Persona 3, 4, 5, and Catherine, is joining him. And Shoji Meguro, who's the composer of Persona 3, 4, 5, and Catherine, he's also joining. So those 3 are literally involved in this project. So they are...
Oh, okay.
This is what they're making. Persona 6, if that is something that's being made, is being made by somebody else entirely.
Oh.
So that's kind of like why Project Refantasy is so exciting. And also because, Hashino kind of broke silence, at the end of last year and said, I think it's about time for us to talk about this game. It's been quiet this whole time, like the hype's kind of dying. And so I'm like, ooh, I'm interested in just about anything they'll throw at me, because they've proven time and time again over the years that they're really great developers. So, I am so excited for that game.
I love that about all this little kind of behind the scenes stuff or the little details that I don't really normally pay attention to. So who's working on you? Maybe you can answer. Who's working on Shin Megami Tensei 5? Because I'm waiting for that too.
So that's actually being done by Atlas. And what's interesting about Atlas is that, you know, Atlas and Sega are the same company. Let's get that out of the way. Sega bought Atlas several years ago, and they've incorporated them since. Why? The reason why I mentioned that is because it is important to track how Atlas is treating their localizations over the past several years. And again, when I say Atlas, I also say Sega, because they're literally in the same building right now, like in the West. Okay, so for example, let's start with this, because this will give you kind of a good timeline of what's going on here. So Judgment, which came out last year, well, no, 2 years ago, excuse me, it's 2 years ago, is the first RGG Studio game that not only has Japanese and English voice acting now, but is also localized to French, Italian, German, and Spanish, right? So that's a big deal. That's a lot of localized languages, right?
Right.
So fast forward to 2020, they announced Yakuza Like a Dragon. They're hemming and hawing at the details, but then you realize that this is the first Yakuza game that was going to have also English voice acting, but also French, Italian, German, and Spanish. Now, going back to Judgment, it's not just enough that they were doing subtitles for the English, part of the game, but they actually cater the subtitles to change if you're playing it in Japanese. And they're actually applying that to both Yakuza. They actually applied that to Yakuza Like a Dragon and Judgment. In other words, what usually So, to backtrack, what usually happens is that if you can select English or Japanese voices, it's usually the same subtitle. So, and that subtitle is usually based off of the Japanese translation, right? And so when people say something in English, sometimes the subtitles don't match. And so, yeah.
I've experienced that with anime. It's really annoying.
Exactly. So you know exactly what I'm talking about. So when they talked about Judgment and they said that the subtitles will change, that was like a huge deal for a lot of people, because they've never seen that kind of level of detail at all in any game whatsoever. Like maybe one or two games have done it, but not to this level. And moving forward from Judgment onward, it's been kind of like a mission of Sega to try to apply that kind of localization process moving forward to all their games. And, and if you also think about the history of the Yakuza series, ever since Scott Strickert took over localization producer for the game, which, by the way, he's a friend of mine. So
yeah, is he was on the podcast before?
Yeah, he was.
Somebody else.
He was on the podcast.
I love that
before.
Episode.
Yeah. And people, you can check it out on the YouTube channel. It's on there. It's really
very informative.
Yeah. Which, by the way, in that episode, not to segue too much, in that episode, there was a question that one of the community members asked him if there was ever a time that he has considered to use the original Japanese name of Yakuza as a subtitle or a new game. And then, of course, in the show, he was like, it's kind of unwieldy because it's kind of long. Like, imagine if you're going to GameStop, and this is literally his words. Like he said, like, imagine if you're going to GameStop and you go up to the counter and the guy says, like, hey, what do you want, man? And you say, like, oh, I want Yakuza Like a Dragon. That's like so like unwieldy. And mind you, this interview was like when Kiwami 2 came out. Fast forward to like 2019 when the Western name came out. I literally DM'd like Scott and I said, what was that about? Like Yakuza Like a Dragon being unwieldy, dude? Because you literally just did that just now. And then he just lulled. And I'm like, okay, dude. Whatever.
That's great.
Yeah. I still kind of give him shit for that because I'm like, yeah, what was that again?
I mean, I feel like game titles are just getting very long these days.
Yeah. I think there's a very good reason, though. Because for one thing, if you put a number next to a game, it kind of makes people feel, and it might not even be true, but it makes people feel that they missed out on something, right? Which is why if you look at Assassin's Creed, that's exactly what they did, right? They're like, oh, Assassin's Creed 4, let's get rid of that shit. Let's do Unity, Syndicate, Odyssey, like there's no number because at the end of the day, it shouldn't matter, and and it helps them and it helps them get people into the series. So, Yakuza Like a Dragon was named that way most likely because of that, but also there's a different protagonist. Like, it's kind of silly to consider this as 7 because Kiryu is like, like his story is literally over, it's pretty much done. So but going back to what we're talking about, like, did you notice, like, ever since Zero and ever since Zero came out many years ago, the time it takes for us to get Yakuza games is getting smaller and smaller every single time? Yeah, that's a concert. That's a conscious effort by Sega to make sure that the gap between the Japanese release and the American release is getting slimmer. Okay, and that culminates to the game that you wanted me to talk about, which is Shin Megami Tensei 5, because
I was
that
wondering
game,
if you remembered that's what we started this with.
yeah, thankfully I did. To be honest, towards the end I was like, no, we're talking about we're talking about SMT5. And and the reason why I bring this up, because Shin Megami Tensei 5 is the culmination of all that hard work. So it's probably going to get an English dub. It's probably going to have specific subtitles for that dub, right? It's going to have French, Italian, German, and Spanish. But ultimately, it's also releasing all over the world on the same day.
I like that.
So we have a story being told here just by watching what Sega is doing. Like, and some people, like, I'm probably the only person that's going to be conscious about it because I'm, like, not because I talked to Scott, but it's more like an observation of like what's happening by taking just one studio and what they're doing with it, and to me that's really exciting because that means, like, we don't have to wait if Japan gets a game. Like, we will just get it alongside them, and I think that's just good for everybody, so there's no like accidental spoilers because somebody's playing a Japanese version. We can just enjoy it like all together. And
that's huge for me.
Does that answer your question?
I guess. So it's coming soon?
I'm guessing it's fall. Because we are going to get Shin Megami Tensei 3 Nocturne Remaster first, my understanding. My guess...
I forgot about that.
You did? A lot of people, like, I think in my Discord, I remember when it was announced, people were kind of almost scarred by that announcement because they were reliving all the nightmares they had playing the original game.
I played that original game. It was my first game in the Shin Megami Tensei before I played any of the Persona games, and it was tough.
It's rough, man. A lot of RNG in that one.
Really rough. Looking back, how did I even get through it?
Yeah, everybody has nightmares of Matador and fighting him in that game.
But it kind of, I'm really excited like that other people are going to be able to experience that game. But again, it goes back to, am I going to go back and replay it? Probably not anytime soon.
It's tough. It's tough to make those decisions, right? And like this year, somebody actually posted in one of my comments saying like, hey, this visual novel from the 90s and stuff, it finally has an official, like an unofficial English patch where you can play the game all in English. And I'm like, that's great, but there's so many games coming out in 2021, as of this recording, I can tell you, buddy, because, you're a trusted friend of mine. I have Atelier Ryza 2. It's literally sitting on my PS5 right now, but also I'm expecting Ys 9 to arrive as well in the same friggin' week. So I don't know how I'm going to review 2 RPGs in the span of, 2 weeks for Ryza, 3 weeks for Ys 9. So I got my work cut out for me.
You're going to be busy.
Yeah, and I kind of feel bad because, I think this is the difference between YouTube and Discord Twitch. Why am I saying Discord? Because on Twitch, you can go live and, and play games and stuff like that and like really, enjoy it with your community. For me, it's and stuff. It's like, and by the way, in case you're wondering, because you are communicating with your community, like, and streaming on a regular basis, like, they know that you exist, right? But like what happens with me when I review games is I kind of going back inside my turtle shell a little bit because I'm like focusing on doing work. And so my fear is that all of a sudden, like, I come out of my shell and be like, okay, I'm done with my reviews. Is anybody here still? You know, like, is anybody still like in my community?
I don't think you have to worry about that.
Okay. All right.
Your community is amazing. I've seen, I'm jealous, you know, I'm a little bit jealous.
Oh,
You're doing great. And you have a great group of people that are backing you up. So don't worry.
Thank you. But you know what I mean, though. It's like it's like you're engrossed in something that sometimes you forget to socialize. You know, and I'm not just talking about socializing as in quote unquote part of my job. It's just like, you know, socializing with people, like you and I talking right now, or you know, doing our town halls on Discord, which, you know, that's a thing that I want to do regularly because I want to take care of my community. You know, and I hope that this year, you know, I can really improve on that. But before we go, I do want to ask you, like, what your plans are for 2021, because I think it's fitting that the year technically just started, even though this episode is going to come out in February. Like, what do you have in store for us in 2021?
So my goal for 2021, I'm actually kind of taking a step back in a way from the frequency of my Twitch streams, because with working a 40-hour job, and then my schedule up until now has been 5 days a week streaming, 4 hours a night, and adding the YouTube on top of that, it's been a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah, I bet.
So, and I feel like I've just been going, and I don't like stop to think about what I'm doing. I just have to go to work, come home, do the stream, go to work, come home, do the stream.
I see.
On my days off, edit videos. And so my plan is to kind of take a step back and give myself more time to brainstorm, to think about, you know, what I'm doing, maybe take some more time on the videos, or make different kinds of videos like you have, you know, spoken to me about privately before, about doing maybe some review type videos, or just something different, some shorter type videos, which I've been people have been kind of requesting, like saying like, oh, you should talk about,
that's great,
you know, your top count down your top songs for the palaces in Persona 5, like someone requested something like that, or like a review, or, and so I took my stream down to 3 days a week for now, and I'm gonna, once I get caught up on some things, I'm gonna maybe bump it back up to 4, because otherwise I just feel like I won't get through all the games that I want to get through. It's just like hard.
Yeah,
it's so hard to try to find the time to balance all of this stuff. But that's what I'm gonna try to do. Yeah.
If I can give you some advice, and
okay,
I think,
please.
I think it's also, this is also going to be helpful for a lot of people out there, especially since we're still kind of in this pandemic and stuff. And, you know, and I know that it's kind of difficult for us to create boundaries because, you know, for some of us, like both our work and our home is literally like the same place. Try to have set hours for the things that you have to do. And I know you kind of do that already to some degree. Like I remember you talking about it before, but I think
very loosely though.
Yeah, very
loosely.
So it needs to have a little bit more rigidity, just because like it helps, you know, with a routine and stuff, like of knowing like, okay, well, this is gonna happen and this has to happen. Oh, this is my relaxing time. And I think it's also important. I don't know how much relaxed time you have, like just to kind of unwind and hang out with the husband and stuff like that. But like I find that it's really important to have those moments where you can literally just shut off everything that's on your mind, like about, you know, your YouTube or your Twitch or games in general, and be able to engage in an activity that is not work, or there's something completely different. Because what I do usually is towards the end of every year, I try to spend at least a week or two off of work, because I know that, you know, I need well, first of all, I need the rest, right? But second of all, something interesting happens when you force yourself to not do creative stuff. Like if you force yourself not to make something, and that is you start feeling hungry for making new things. And that's actually a really good thing, because you'll find that when you go back to work, when you go back to making things, whether it's Twitch, YouTube, drawing, or painting and stuff, you have so much more ideas than what you can do with. And because you're coming into this with so many ideas, it kind of forces you to filter some of the ideas that you can do right now versus things that you can probably do later. And personally, that's what I usually do. Is like, okay, I have all these millions of ideas. I put them on a board, like a spreadsheet, and then I just kind of remove them if, they've gotten stale, so to speak. Like if I'm not interested in it anymore. But ultimately what happens is that you'll also notice that you learn quicker. You're executing things a lot faster, and you come up with better ideas to make things, and I hope like this kind of helps you out, because really when I see people like take the much needed rest from everything that they do, they come back like 100 times better. Like they're so ready to take on the world. Sometimes they take on too much, so that's what I'm going to warn you, Bunny. Like that's the problem of getting away sometimes. Kind of easing back into it. Give yourself much needed breaks. If you have ideas during those breaks, write them down. And then don't look at them until you come back, and then simply come back. You'll be really surprised how much you can achieve, like with just a little bit more rest. How's that sound?
Very good advice. I'm definitely going to keep that in mind, because I think that's where I'm just kind of struggling the most, is time management and and like you said, just stepping back.
Yeah. And again, like I feel like that goes for everybody. Like take a step back. If something that you're enjoying doesn't feel like enjoyable anymore, it's not because some weird thing like changed in your life. It just means like you need to kind of ease off on it a little bit. And trust me, like it'll come back, and once it does, you're gonna be there 110%. There's not even a doubt. But anyways, I think that about does it for this episode of the podcast. We survived, Bunny. Like we actually got through the whole episode. But before we go, I'd like you to actually share with people like where they can find you and what you do. It's not like as though they don't know, but like just in case.
Okay. Well, my bread and butter where I started out is on Twitch. So you can find me at twitch.tv/bunnytails. And I'm currently streaming in the evenings, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. And I'm playing through all my backlog. It's 99.9%. Whoa, wait. 99.9%.
What?
That's a lot of nines.
That is a lot of nines.
Blind playthroughs. So if that's your jam, and I like to focus on RPGs and kind of action adventure games and things like that, games with a really good story, or that just take place in a really amazing, well-built world. So that's what I do there. And then on my YouTube, I'm transferring that content onto the YouTube in a more condensed form. And you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/bunnytails as well.
Yeah, it's like bunny snacks, it's like a little tidbit of like your stream, bite-sized. People can experience it and enjoy.
Well, if you consider hour-long videos bite-sized, but it's better than 4 hours.
Yes, I mean, yeah, like relatively speaking, yes, it's relatively bite-sized. But Bunny, I want to thank you again for being on the show. It's really a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, finally. And of course, for everybody out there, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this if you're watching this on YouTube. And of course, if you're listening to this, it is available on almost every single podcast platform known to man. And I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.